So 4.7 quadratic formula, negative b plus or minus square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a, right? And as I said, I like to write it with the 2a's in both denominators here because it'll help you realize to reduce fractions if you can. So when we look at this problem, 2x squared minus x equals 4, we want to make sure it always looks like this. Y equals ax squared plus bx plus c. What's that formula called again? Standard form of a quadratic, right? There's standard form for a linear, quadratic, cubic, lots of standard forms, in this case quadratic. So to make it look like this on the right here, I have to subtract 4 from both sides first. So I get 2x squared minus x minus 4 equals 0. And then you identify a, b, and c from here. So a equals 2, b equals negative 1, and c equals negative 4. If it bugs you, the light on your desk back there, because the sun just came out behind the clouds, you can close those blinds all the way. If not, I don't care. Either way for me. Now I'm going to write quadratic formula again, because the more times you write it, the more chance it has to get into your long-term memory. So negative b over 2a plus or minus square root of b squared minus 4ac over 2a. Now when I was helping kids with their homework last period, I saw some people making the square root go all the way to the bottom of the fraction. The square root is only in the numerator. Okay? So if you get some sort of fraction here top to bottom, do not reduce that fraction. Simplify the square root first, and then see if you can reduce a fraction. Now we're going to plug this in. So the b is negative, so x equals negative, negative 1, right, like that, over 2 times 2, plus or minus. Really important that you put that negative 1 in parentheses, so negative 1 squared. If you don't use parentheses here, you get the wrong answer, and that's super annoying if you plug it in correctly to get the wrong answer. So a is 2, and c is negative 4. And then it's still over 2 times 2 in the bottom. So I'll let you get caught up with that. Write that down. It's an easy lesson today. So we're just going to simplify what's here. So you get x equals 1/4 plus or minus. Underneath the radical, I would just put that entire thing underneath the radical in my calculator without the square root to make sure I don't screw that up. But I've done it 3 times today, so I know I'm not going to screw it up. So negative 4 times 2 times negative 4 is positive 32. And then you just add what's underneath the radical here, 1 plus 32, and x equals 1/4 plus or minus square root of 33 over 4. And you're done. Okay? So what does this mean, the quadratic formula? What is it helping you to find? The quadratic formula helps you to find the place where the parabola crosses the x-axis. Right? We're finding the zeros, so that's a beautiful 0. 1/4 plus square root of 33 over 4 is one of the zeros, and 1/4 minus square root of 33 over 4 is the second 0. Right? Those are the 2 places where that parabola crosses the x-axis. The parabola can cross the x-axis twice, come down and touch the x-axis and go back up, and it can not touch it at all, which we'll talk about as the lesson goes on. So write this one down. Who can tell me, looking at that, I had a kid do it last period, I didn't even think to ask that question, what does x equal? Some of you can do that in your head and tell me what x equals. Nope. Close. 3's close. If you think about the zero product property, meaning you take the parenthesis and set it equal to 0 and solve for x, it's not 3, but because it would be x plus 3 equals 0. And if you solve for 0, it would be negative 3. Okay? So if you know that this thing factors to x plus 3, times x plus 3 or x plus 3 squared, either one. So we know that, oops, I didn't mean to write the squared there. We know that x plus 3 equals 0, and we can subtract 3 from both sides, so x equals negative 3. So you could know the answer before you begin, but if I tell you to use a quadratic formula and you solve it this way, you get 1 out of the 4 points, right? Because you have to solve it using quadratic formula. So we're going to do quadratic formula down here. So a equals 1, b equals 6, and c equals 9. And again, I'm going to write the quadratic formula. X equals negative b over 2a plus or minus square root of b squared minus 4ac over 2a. And then plug that in. So we get negative 6 over 2 plus or minus 6 squared minus 4 times 1 times 9 over 2. So underneath the radical becomes 36 minus 36, which is 0. So we get negative 3 plus or minus square root of 0 over 2. And anything 0 squared of 0 is still 0. Divided by 2 goes away. 0 divided by 2 is 0. So our only answer here is x equals negative 3. So what that means, if you think about it graphically, you just go over negative 1, 2, 3, make a dot, and the parabola is going to be above the x-axis like that. What's the y-intercept of that parabola? 0 what? Y-intercept. If you look at the original problem, 9. Good. 0c is the y-intercept, so 0, 9 is the y-intercept. So you can see mine crosses roughly 0, 9. Right? I didn't go crazy with the graph or anything, but that's how it all kind of makes sense and you can put it together. Understanding those larger connections helps you understand the math better, so I encourage you to do so. What do you have to write down from this thing? You need to write down the equation, and then we're trying to make a profit of 200. So as you write that down, I'll read this question. Now we're applying the quadratic formula. It says your school's jazz band is selling CDs as a fundraiser. The total profit P depends on the amount X that your band charges for each CD. The equation P equals negative X squared plus 48X minus 300 models the profit of the fundraiser. What is the least amount in dollars, right? So that means we're rounding to whole numbers because it's in dollars. You can charge for a CD to make a profit of 200. Where's the 200 go in the equation? That should be a really easy question where the P is, right? P for profit. The profit is 200, so it's 200 equals negative X squared plus 48X minus 300. So we're going to subtract that 200 over. So we can do the quadratic formula with this. So you end up with negative X squared plus 48X minus 500. Algebra 2 is used a ton for business, right? Maximizing profits, that's what we're talking about here. I've been told by various parents I could go out in industry and make like 2-3 times my salary just like that because I know Algebra 2 really well. But then I wouldn't get to teach you lovely people and I'd be sad, right? Money is not the secret to happiness at all. Enjoying your job, one of the many secrets to happiness, right? But you guys know there are teachers that don't enjoy their job also. Yeah, you can think of some teachers you have. That's not me. I like my job. It's fun. Okay, so we're going to plug in here. A is negative 1. B is 48. C is negative 500. And then you might start bitching and moaning, oh, my life's so hard. They're big numbers. Who the heck cares? You got a calculator, right? No big deal. So x equals negative 48 over 2 times negative 1 plus or minus square root. So this is a big one here. 48 squared minus 4 times negative 1 times negative 500 all over 2 times negative 1. So what I'd recommend you doing right now is put this in your calculator, not the square root, just what's underneath the square root. Put that in your calculator and make sure you can come up with 304. So just the highlight part, not the square root. And I'll show you how I put it in right there. You don't have to use all those parentheses because it's a little bit annoying. But you can put multiplication in between, that's fine. But you should end up with 304. So double check that you can do that. Yeah. The most annoying thing is missing a problem when you have everything right, putting it into your calculator incorrectly. Super annoying. So be careful with that. Just waiting for a couple of people to finish that up. So again, to remind you, quiz next block day, test block day after that. Okay, so you should get 304. Or the test is not the block day, it's a Tuesday after that. So here we get x equals, this is negative 48 divided by negative 2, or 24. Plus or minus square root of 304 divided by negative 2. No. So when you put this in your calculator, really important, you have to use parentheses like that. Okay, put that whole second fraction in parentheses. If I just do 24 plus square root of 304 divided by negative 2, then I'm dividing by negative 2 twice. I already divided by negative 22 on the 24. So when you plug it in your calculator, it should look like the top two here, right? So one with the plus. Remember, you can hit second enter to get the minus one after you get the plus one in. So double check that, make sure you can do that correctly, okay? So rounded to dollars, this would be 15 and 33. And then we got to read the original question to make sure that you don't screw that up. Bless you. Again. Always come in twos? Me too. squared minus 4ac is positive, you have two real solutions. If b squared minus 4ac equals 0, you have one solution like we did on that previous example where it came down and touched the x-axis, went back up. Same thing over here. It can come up and touch the x-axis and go back down. When you have two solutions, it just means the parabola crosses the x-axis twice, like it does there and there. And then if b squared minus 4ac, what's just off the screen, if that is negative, then the parabola does not even touch the x-axis. It's either totally below or totally above the x-axis. So that's if b squared minus 4ac is negative. It'll tell you the solutions. So after you get this slide down, we just have one discriminant problem, and then we are done. And if you think about b squared minus 4ac being positive, the reason we have the two solutions is we have the plus or minus in the quadratic formula. So the plus is one of the solutions and the minus is the other. When you get 0, this is like that example we did, the second example, x squared plus 6x plus 9. That's where you get square root of 0, which canceled out the entire second fraction, which is why there's just one solution. And if it's negative, again, you have no solution. We'll get into this thing in the next unit where you have the square root of -1. Does anyone know what that equals? If you're in advanced algebra 1 at any point, you should know what that equals. Anyone? Equals I, right? Imaginary numbers. Because if math isn't hard enough, we just start making crap up. Imaginary numbers, right? And we'll do all sorts of joyous math with square root of -1. Okay? Just to give you a little window into the next unit. All right, does anyone need more time on this? Yeah? Okay, yeah. Last example after that. So block day for you guys on Thursday, we'll start on the complex numbers, dealing with this I stuff, because you'll want a lot of time. And I will just overwhelm you with information on block day. Okay, long lesson, like hour long, just hammering you with I stuff. Okay? We good on this? Yes. All right, write this one down. -2x squared minus 3x plus 5 equals 0. And we're only doing the discriminant. Remember, the discriminant is just b squared minus 4ac. If the discriminant is positive, how many real solutions? If the discriminant is positive, you have 2. If the discriminant is negative, how many solutions? None. If the discriminant is 0, how many solutions? 1. Okay, so here A is -2, B is -3, and C is 5. So we're just doing the b squared. Don't forget the parentheses. B squared minus 4A in this case is -2. C is 5. So you get 9 plus 40, which is 49, which are 2 real solutions. Yes, that sounded like a fart. 2 real solutions. Okay, positive number. All right? That is it. So quadratic formula, -b plus or minus square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. That tells you how many times the parabola crosses the x-axis. Discriminant is just b squared minus 4ac. That is it. Your homework